All right, everybody, welcome to today's episode of We As Start Talking. I am Gareth, your host for today. We got an amazing guest lined up. But before we jump into that, first of all, I just want to give a shout out to everyone out there who is listening, sharing episodes on their social media, all of our supporters on Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee. They're sites that you can go check out. You can find us on there at We As Start Talking. And it just helps us to basically keep the microphones on and keep these amazing conversations. Anything you can do, if you learn anything, if you get anything from this episode today, which I know you will, you can just share it, put it on your social media, send it the link to a friend. You've got the links right there in your podcast player to do that, and that really goes a long way, so we appreciate it. All right, we're gonna jump in. So today I want to welcome Alicia Wood to the podcast. Alicia, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
Really good, really good. It's a good day. It's such a good day. I had my coffee, got for a walk outside. It's warm. My workout. It's been awesome. So I'm excited for this conversation.
So am I. So am I. Thanks for having me.
Wow, thank you for being here, because your time is always we're always very grateful for everybody's time, for everyone that comes on the show. And we had an amazing conversation back last month, and it just kind of spurred on this continuation of this conversation and this connection. So I really appreciate it. I'm a big energy person, and I talk about this a lot on the shows. I'm attracted to energy. So when I get that feeling of that energy, and we connected through a mutual friend of ours, shout out to Trevor. If he's listening, he better be. And we kind of connected through that and listening to you podcast, and and I just you get attracted to that certain energy, that certain sound. And I was like, yes, this is a connection we have to build. So I'm really grateful for you being on the show today.
I completely agree. I love this. Oh, so excited for this.
Cool. So what we're going to do, we're going to dive in now. Alicia is a fellow fitness professional, and running not only a very successful podcast, which is amazing, and it'll be linked in the show notes so you can check it out, but also your kind of I guess your take on the mindset around fitness and exercise and Camp Fuel, where you have that client base and those people, which is again just another massively successful part of what you do, and the mindset and the journey involved in that is something that is really close to my heart. And I know we're going to get into a lot of the content, and we share a lot of the same kind of story. So I'd love to just hear a little bit about your kind of evolution from, let's call it like the non-fitness professional, however far back that is, into kind of this world of like growth and health and well-being and fitness, and kind of how you got there. So tell the listeners and me all about that.
Okay. First of all, I want to say that I am so bad with time. So whenever somebody asks me like, when did this start? I'm like, 10 years ago. I'm always like 10 years ago, but I have no idea. Obviously time moves, but for some reason it doesn't move in my brain. So there was a point in time where I was very unhealthy. I was not somebody who exercised. I definitely would say things like, I don't exercise, I'm unhealthy. I was a smoker. I was working in television production at the time, and I was leading a very fast go, go, go lifestyle. And I think that my transition into getting into like the coaching world started when I quit smoking. So for any smokers who are listening, did you smoke? Have you ever smoked?
I extremely casually, yes. When I was a lot younger.
So you weren't the best smoker, which is good. I was a really good smoker. I think I was strong at it. And I also wasn't a quitter, like I don't quit. So it was hard for me to break that. I would try and quit and then couldn't, try and quit and couldn't. And obviously the last time I started to see myself differently and started to see myself as somebody who didn't smoke. And that's when things started to shift. My self-image started to change, and I was no longer a smoker. But I had replaced smoking with food. And so I had put on weight. And so then it came to the point where I hit I hit like a breaking point with the smoking of, I can't do this anymore. I hit a breaking point with the weight gain, where it's like, I can't do this anymore. Something has to change. And with that, I had dieted and gained it back, dieted, gained it back my whole life leading up to that point. And then again, another shift happened where it was like, I no longer saw myself as that person that dieted. I was going to be this person that was healthy and lived a healthy lifestyle. And so I released 60 pounds. And in that process, started like, I was exercising and eating healthy. And so through the exercise, I was going to a lot of group fitness classes, and the instructors were epic. And eventually moved from the back of the room to the front of the room right beside the instructor, and was very much in their eye line. They would joke and be like, you should teach the next class. And I was like, go on, should I? But I had social anxiety. Like, I had social anxiety and stage fright. And that was something that was so far out of how I saw myself to be. And it took a year of me imagining myself at the front of the room, and seeing myself teaching classes for me to finally take the plunge and become a fitness instructor. And then everything started to snowball. I ended up leaving my television career to pursue fitness full time. I wanted to create a community, which is where Camp Fuel came in. And then I started to really realize, like, wait, what was it that was different in those times than the times before? And it was all mindset, which is where I spend a lot of my time now, is helping people to understand what's going on inside affects what's happening outside.
Yeah, and you said it's such an important thing that stood out for me, and the way that you started to think about not being a person who didn't smoke, or doing things that a person who didn't smoke did. I think that comes with fitness, right? The same kind of thing. I talk about that a lot with my clients, and also my other, my colleagues, is that mindset of, how do you approach that habit building? And it's about that, right? What is a person who is leaner, fitter, stronger, healthier, whatever it is. And, we're relating it obviously to fitness, but that could be anything, right? You could be someone who's better at finances, someone who's better at being a partner, whatever it is what are those people doing? And secondly to that, are you surrounding yourself with those type of people? Because that's massive, right? But it's so easy to say, I'm going to quit smoking, or I'm going to lose weight, and I'm going to come back to the word you used, which is genius. But when it's weight loss or it's smoking, it's just quitting something is such a temporary statement that so many things can influence. Whereas if we start to look at, what does a healthy person do? They get up and they move every day. Maybe they walk 10,000 steps. Maybe they walk 5,000 steps. Start there. Do what that type of person does, and you become that type of person. And that's how you build those long-term habits. So I really love that. Is that something that you find with your clientele, and anyone that you work with in any walk of life? Is that something that people struggle to differentiate between, like the actual thing they want to stop doing and who they want to become?
100%. I think that most people don't give it any thought, to be honest. We typically go from, and you actually mentioned it, like, what does that person do? And we often think that we need to do the things that the person with my goal does. But if we think about it, we actually need to be the person before we even do the doing. So we need to back it up actually one step behind and go, well, the person with my goal, how do they think? And I'll take it back to the fitness example of, I used to think, I hate exercising. I don't exercise. I'm not a healthy person. I would think those things, and then I would verbalize those things. So we work on 95% of our lives on subconscious programming. And so when we do everything subconsciously, like 95% of our lives is a lot of time. So if you think about that, if I'm saying things like, I'm unhealthy, I don't exercise, I hate exercising, then my subconscious, and I repeat that over and over again. When we repeat those thoughts, they become beliefs. And when it's a belief, that's what drives our actions. And so if I'm believing that I'm not the type of person that exercises, I'm not the type of person that likes to go to the gym, I'm not the type of person that wants to do any of these things, then I'm not going to be driven to do those things. So it's now going, well, but the person who does do those things, do they think like that? does the person with my goal think I hate going to the gym? Not likely.
Yeah.
Not likely. So we need to start shifting. And I didn't do this. I didn't do this consciously. I didn't know I was doing it at the time. But now looking back and having done the research, I realized what I did was I started thinking like the person who had my goal. So instead of just going like, I do the things and I surround myself with the people, which yes, we do need to do those things. I also went back and I was like, well, how do they think? And they think it's easy for me to get up in the morning and go for a workout. I enjoy working out. I may not have thought that right away. Like it might have been like, it's getting easier and easier to work out. Like, let's ease into it. We don't need to go hardcore, but starting to, and that's where like affirmations even come in, starting to think about those things. I might have skipped too far ahead. I got too excited.
No, not at all. It's all really valuable. And what I love about that is, and I know mindset and affirmations and, manifestation is kind of buzzwords out there right now. And I know that I see a lot of negativity around that, just in the media and, and all the things we consume, because it's a bit woo woo, if want for a better word to describe it, because people think, oh, it's woo woo. It's not tangible, right? But it's so true that we and I talk about this, and we have some episodes that I covered on it, solo shows, about how you're the story you tell yourself. And it's so true. Like if you tell yourself that repeated story of something, you will be that person. And we're talking about fitness, but I want to make sure that this can resonate with kind of everyone, even if they're not on that type of journey. Think about the way you speak about your appearance, your beauty, the way you speak about how you're a parent, how you deal with your finances. I'm terrible with money. I always get on my wife about this, and she doesn't really listen to the show that much, so she probably won't hear this, so I can talk about her. But she always says that I'm bad with money, I'm bad with finances, you look after it. I'm like, if you keep telling yourself you're bad at finances, guess what? You're subconsciously going to continue to be bad at finances. Start telling yourself you are capable of dealing with those things, right? Same thing if I tell my, and I teach this a lot with my daughter. She's 4, so we talk a lot about that, right? It's not necessarily, you have to attach the right message to who you are. And be aware of that. And then it comes to things like the good and the bad too, right? Like we always try and steer her away from I'm good or I'm bad. It's, maybe you made a bad choice, maybe you made a good choice. However, you're still an amazing human being regardless. And that might be a bit biased. Other people might not think that, but it's so true. And it's so impactful to understand that. And I think it covers everything. So, what I encourage the listeners to do is think about where in your life you're telling yourself a negative message. Is it about the way you look, the way you feel, how you handle your finances, how you show up at your job every day, what kind of parent you are? Because I guarantee that if you're telling yourself a negative message and you're especially attaching the I am message to that, you're perpetuating that in your subconscious habits 100%. And we see it all the time, and I see it myself. And as you alluded to, you see it in yourself as well. So I think that's really, really powerful. And this is, I'm not trying to derail it, though I just have something that came up for me. You spoke about that kind of almost what I can refer to as kind of imposter syndrome, like that social anxiety is how you described it. And what it makes me think is that if I show up and I do this, maybe, I'm too anxious to get up there, and maybe that's rooted in the ability to do something or belong there or be that person that's up on stage. And I'm just wondering if when, throughout your life back in TV production, when you were younger, is that something that came up for you then? Because for me, in my journey, I came from, much like yourself, kind of a health journey that was very off the rails when I was a kid. But I never really suffered with that until later in life. So I jumped in with both feet as a overweight teenager, didn't have an issue just taking a job, learning to be a fitness instructor, becoming a personal trainer, standing up in front of people, and no doubt being judged for the way I looked. And that probably still happens now, but it happened way more 20 years ago, especially in the fitness industry. And I didn't suffer with that, but it's something that came on later in life for me, where that real imposter syndrome and that anxiety around that crept up. And I know you're not a psychologist, but I just wondered your thoughts on that. And so I'm trying to get you to fix me, like on the show.
Yeah.
But also whether that came up for you, whether that's something you've always had, or did that creep up later in life for you as well?
It's funny because I immediately wanted to go to coaching, and I wanted to start asking you more questions and get deeper and be like, when did it show up? Like, what? And just start asking questions. Yes, for me, it showed up my entire life. I no longer identify as somebody who has social anxiety. but it showed up for me my whole way through. And I think it goes back to like being picked last in gym class. It goes back to I have vivid memories of me doing a presentation and holding a piece of paper in my hand and the paper just making so much noise because I was shaking so much. And I would start a class at the beginning of a school year in high school, and the first day they're like, this is the format of the class and your final grade depends on a presentation. And I would be like, I'm sorry, I have to go to the guidance counselor's office. And then I would just switch classes. So I never went out of my comfort zone. I stayed very comfortably in my zone and I didn't push myself. Even when I was in television production, I did well in television production. I worked my way up, but I still somehow managed to do that while hiding in meetings. I would be in meetings and be like, don't call on me, don't call on me, don't call on me. Even if I had a great idea, I wouldn't say it out loud. So yeah, it showed up for me quite a bit, but I work through it now. Now I work through it through I am statements, through seeing myself as a person. I visualize myself doing a lot of the things I do. And I realized that that's what I was doing over the time. I'd see myself as the person who had already released the weight. I'd see myself doing things that smokers don't do, like staying on a plane with no issues. And so I visualize myself doing those things. And now I still do it. I visualize myself on stage in front of thousands of people and it feeling incredible to be able to like help all these people feel amazing. So even, yeah, as you're saying, it's not just health, it's every aspect of our life that these things can show up.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. So I love to hear that. Thank you for sharing that. It's kind of been there something. What I guess my let's call it a topic to discuss, because I don't really know if it's a question, but isn't it interesting how when we have almost the and this is the wrong way to phrase it, but when we have the right to feel like an imposter, and this is related to my situation, I almost had the right, like I was an overweight 17-year-old that had been in the gym 7 times and, you know, going on a lifeguard training in a pair of shorts, not looking at the, let's say, the prime vision of health, should we call it. I had all the right in the world to be scared and be an imposter. Or I was an imposter, really. And if you look at where I was stepping into, I was an imposter and I had all the right to feel like that. However, I didn't. Now, 20 years in the fitness industry as a professional, you know, some of the things that you spoke about, those being up on stage, talking in front of thousands of people, and that's still sometimes a bit scary. But when you get to do those things and you be online and you deliver things and you podcast and you put things out there in the world, now I have this imposter syndrome around things I do. Isn't it fascinating how we can develop that, whatever it's about? And I wonder whether you've seen it and have any ideas on why. But when we have the right to have that feeling, we don't have it.
Oh, okay. Yes. First of all, okay, I'm just so excited about this conversation. But I want to talk about, why did you have the right to feel like you were an imposter? Why do you think that you were an imposter?
Good question. I guess because I wasn't in my eyes at the time, and it's all internal. I guess at that point in time, I felt like I didn't belong in there. Like I wasn't someone that was in great shape. I was going to go into a world where somebody put my unhealthy, deconditioned self in a swimming pool and asked me to save other people. Like, I could barely swim. Well, I could swim, but it was a pretty heavy individual to be in a swimming pool trying to save people. So I guess in my vision of that as a lifeguard is, you know, like the people on Baywatch that I watched when I was a kid. So I guess it's what we consume. And then the same thing with the fitness world, right? Like back in the 90s, it was late 90s, is a lot of the people in the industry were bodybuilders. A lot of the people were fitness models. A lot of the people were ex-athletes. Well, I was very far from being an ex-athlete or a bodybuilder at the time. Yeah. So I guess that's where my view of that story that I kind of, now I look back on it, because at the time, I don't think that I thought like that. And no, I definitely didn't think like that at the time. It's only now when I look back on it, I'm like, wow, I was so far out of my depth. So I guess
Interesting.
that, yeah. But I didn't think it at the time. It didn't. I just did it, and people were like, how were you that brave? I'm like, yeah, I have no idea.
So you didn't feel it at the time. Do you
Mm.
feel it now?
Yes.
In what aspects?
Yeah, not all the time. Just in certain things in life, right? Like I think it's particularly when you start something new. So I'd start a podcast and then it's that, oh, well, what right do I have to be having conversations with amazing people and putting them out on the internet for people to listen to? So I guess it comes up with those things. But even sometimes when I'm posting like, social media content or I'm presenting at something or, back at when we could present like, real humans with other people in the room, you get up there in front of people, it's scary, right? So that stuff creeps up and I'm constantly asking myself that question, like, do I belong here? Do I have something to add value, etc.? So yeah, it still
Oh,
comes out.
yes.
I would say it's way less frequent than it was. It was like a big mountain. Like there was nothing kind of early when I was a teenager and getting into the industry. It peaked in like my 30s, like massively, like really stopped me from doing a lot of things. Now as I get like nearly 40, it comes and goes. I could get it sometimes, and other times I'm pretty confident with my ability to do things.
Yeah. I think, and this is me kind of guessing. I'm not going to say that this is concrete, but I think that there's also this element of when we are younger, we jump into things because our subconscious and all of those beliefs and all the things haven't fully formed yet. By the time I believe it's about 35, everything's kind of like locked in and this is kind of who you are. You can still change it, but if you choose not to change it and everything stays the same, you're just kind of going to be locked in there.
Phew, got some things to change still.
You can change some stuff, but it's so interesting. I think the biggest thing with, and then as you get older, and this is what I've been hearing from a lot of other people too, as you get in like 40, you stop caring as much. As you get to like 50, you're just like, I don't care what you think. 60, you're just like I could care less what anybody thinks about me. I'm going to do my own thing. So when it comes back to like the whole imposter syndrome, is often when we struggle with imposter syndrome, it's because we're thinking about ourselves. We're thinking, what are they going to think about me? What if I'm not good enough? What if I'm this? What if I screw up? What if I look like an idiot? What if they figure out I don't know what I'm doing? It's all about ourselves. But if we can flip it and start to go, how can I help people feel good? Or how can I help people? And like what you said, how can I add value? That's where we can start to shift. Instead of focusing on the problem, I'm using air quotes, instead of focusing on the problem, let's focus on where we want things to go, and the solution. And so the solution to imposter syndrome is helping people. Typically, the solution is, how can I add value? How can I make somebody feel good? How can I help somebody get to their next level? And even in my coaching, yeah, I still feel imposter syndrome. I'm like, am I doing enough? Am I good enough? And as soon as I start feeling that, I'm like, no, how can I help them? How can I help them? How can I add value? How can I, and completely flip it to not be about me and to be about the people that I'm serving. If we like to use that word, I do still.
No, I like it. I like that word. I think we're here to. I did an episode about this back last year. That, in my opinion, we're doing one of two things, or we're doing them in tandem with one another. We're either growing or we're serving. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's our purpose on the planet. So, I totally resonates with me, that word.
Yeah, I think you're growing while you're serving too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
you kind of, it's one, the other, or it's both. It's, a little bit of that. And it takes a lot of awareness to do those things. I think as well, what you're talking of there and what it kind of says to me is that it's also about action. And I had this conversation with a friend of mine this week, actually, about, she's like, she said to me, how do you just take action on everything you decide to do? And what I said was, I really appreciate that. I take it as a compliment. However, know that doesn't come with ease. Like, taking action doesn't come with ease. It takes with a lot of bravery. And action is kind of almost like what you're saying. I think when you refer it to the world of coaching, it's about how can I help? But how you can help, that's taking action. So whatever it is, right? Are you scared to get up on stage and talk in front of people? Guess what? Go stand on stage and talk in front of people. Because when you take action on something, you'll build confidence, you'll build habit, and it will be from there. on that note, thank you for coming to Gareth's personal coaching session. No, I'm joking. I'm going to not make it the rest of the show about me. However, I did appreciate that insight. It's very insightful. So I like to just fix my own stuff while we're recording. So what I'm constantly in my head going back to now, and this interests me, and it kind of aligns with my story because, like I said, it's kind of a little bit of a similar, right? Like a different timeline, but we kind of went through, similar challenges. I experienced a lot of things growing up that obviously imprinted on me and my experiences in the way I show up. You obviously touched on smoking and let's just call it general health. So it was, whether it was food, whether it was health, it was something that was a habit that was quite possibly you were using as to medicate. I would make an assumption. However, we're going to hear about that. I'd like to know what you have discovered or what maybe you think about your kind of early life and how you developed those, why you developed those habits, and was it linked to something that, maybe you experienced as a kid or as a teenager or whatever?
Yeah. I grew up in a household that wasn't all that healthy. So the unhealthy foods they were just regular, like that was just the normal. Sorry, there's like fire truck going past.
That's okay. Adds to the texture. It's fine.
So yeah, I didn't grow up in a household that was all that healthy. There was no exercise going on around me. There was nothing really active. So I kind of followed in those footsteps for a really long time. And then I find that as I get older, I started to realize that I've started to rebel against everything that was in my childhood. Like I rebel against the mindset stuff. I rebel against like everything now is me. It's like they say you turn into your parents or you rebel against your parents. I have fully rebelled against my parents. And yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with this, but that's kind of the way that I grew up.
Yeah, no, I love that. And what that speaks to, and we talk a lot about, mental health on the show, and, and a lot of the time it's linked to trauma. For you, it just sounds like it's linked to what was imprinted on you in the way you grew up. And that's kind of how I refer to it for me too, actually. And again, we're very similar in that. I grew up in a household where we had things we needed. We had, like you said, food, probably too much of the wrong food, but there wasn't really that structure. There wasn't anyone. I didn't have a role model that was out there doing lots of exercise. My dad had a very active job, but you don't see that when you're a kid because they're not there. And there's things in there, and my mum and dad were doing the best they could, but we had love, security. My parents were both there. Yeah. So all those things. So I don't really think there was a trauma there, but it was what was imprinted on me. And it sounds like that was very similar. We're like the same person right now.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. No trauma with me. It was just, just exactly what was imprinted on me in my subconscious from when I was young.
Yeah. And do you find that what then as a result? So for me, the result of that lifestyle was that I went through high school, or secondary school, as we call it in England, being bullied quite a lot because of the way I looked. And so I didn't have anything kind of trauma, I guess, from a kid. There was some perfectionism and some stuff that's rubbed off for me later in life that I've had to deal with. But like I said, no mass kind of trauma, just things that were imprinted on me. But the result of that was that I went through these like teenage, like very formative years, having a lot of negative self-talk because of the way I looked and what people were speaking to me, right? Like I was the fat kid at school, or one of a few. So, it's all those little things that I find creep up through life a lot less now, thankfully. But as a kid, did your lifestyle result in any, negativity from either in your head or from others?
Yeah, it's funny because I'm just going to tell this story that comes up. It was self-worth that I think was the big thing. And fear of being abandoned. And so when I was in grade 8, I went on vacation and went to Florida for a week. And when I came back from Florida, all of my friends hated me. So all of my close friends were like, we had a discussion. I talk about this on my podcast in more depth. And which actually had one of those people reach out to me, and it was so hard to, I felt so bad because I've forgiven them completely. They were kids, but something had happened. They had some sort of conversation, and they were like, Alicia's out, and we nominate you to tell her when she gets back. And she was my best friend, and I didn't realize that. And she's like, she has now told me, like, I'm so sorry, I should have never done that, whatever. And so I know, so you take that one incident that for me led me to feel like everybody's going to leave me. I don't have that many close friends. I have like a couple close friends from like high school, but I don't have a massive group of friends because I don't actually allow myself to get that close to people. This is something I'm currently still dealing with. I don't allow myself to get that close to people because of that incident and a couple others. And then the same incident from another perspective of the other person is like, I screwed up and I should have never done that. And I don't even know like the trickle effect of that in her life. You know what I mean? So that was it. It was like self-worth. People don't love me. I'm not lovable. Like if I get too close to somebody, they're going to leave me. And that was a massive issue in relationships when I was younger. Like I was so jealous in relationships, and because I was terrified that they would leave. And obviously we all know how that ends up turning out. It's like, you can't keep somebody by being crazy jealous.
Well, you can if you lock them in your basement, but it's illegal.
It's frowned upon.
Yeah. Yeah, the abandonment's an interesting thing. It comes up a lot on the shows. I've never really linked it though to my story. But Carl, who's the other host, or one of the other hosts of the show, he grew up as he was adopted, and then he had issues with his adoptive dad not being there and leaving, and so he has a real attachment to obviously being abandoned. However, I've never really linked that. But I think about my journey. I went through school not enjoying it. I went through lots of the same kind of feelings that you had, right? It wasn't as brutal. That is, by the way, horrible. And I'm glad that person reached out and said they should never have done that, because that's a good learning opportunity for them. But yeah,
I mean, in all fairness, she reached out years ago and apologized. Like, and I felt bad when the podcast came out. I was like, I really should have given you the heads up. I'm so sorry.
I always wonder that when I say things. Sometimes I'm like, oh shit, who's going to listen to it? But it's so it's interesting that I find it links a lot to, I went through that, and it wasn't really that I got abandoned. I was actually quite fortunate that I had surface level, but had friends at school, and I was included in things like playing football or soccer. I was, and although I was just the fat kid they put in goal because I covered up more of the goal than anyone else. However, I was still included, even if it was for not the nicest reasons. It's interesting that I still get that sense of not kind of abandonment, but not belonging because of the way I looked and probably a lot of how I felt. And then when I'm listening to your story, I'm thinking, oh, maybe there's a reason I packed all my stuff up. Why I literally left. I moved from where I went to school at like 18 to a different town. And then I moved even further away from that. Then I went off in another industry, and I just disconnect. Like I have probably 2 people, and I have a fairly big like social, connections and followings. I probably have 2 or 3 people that I grew up with on there. That's it. Until like the age of like 25 onwards, which is when I met my now wife, and that kind of started like a new chapter for me. But now I'm thinking to myself, oh, maybe I do have issues with abandonment, and that's why instead of being abandoned, I just ran away. And then at like 25, packed everything up and left the country, went to another country, did it again, and then again, like 3 times in a row. So there's an interesting moment. Bit of a cathartic moment for me. So
something to meditate on after this.
Yeah, right. Maybe I got more issues around abandonment than I first thought.
It's interesting because I think it comes up for a lot of people, and it goes unnoticed, and it went unnoticed for me for a very long time. And I spent an awful lot of time looking inward. And so when I started to realize like, oh, I actually shut out everybody. I don't let anybody in. And when somebody gets close to me, I back off. And I'm so glad that I've realized this, because now I've actually been able to tell people this and open up and go, hey, if I'm not reaching out to you, it's not because I don't love you. It's because I don't like I'm still working on loving me, and I need you to know that like I also need to know whether or not you love me. Like I'm still trying to figure that out. It's like, but it's like you don't owe me that, so I need to just love myself enough to know that that's enough. And that's an ongoing thing I'm working on.
Yeah, I think we all, if we're not all doing that, we should be, because I think that's a lot of the issues with everything we experience in life, right? Like not being able to accept it. And and another thing that, it really sticks out for me, and listeners would have heard this a lot when Carl's hosting on the show, and he talks about a conversation that, he had in the past about how the love that you'll only ever receive the love that you think that you deserve, regardless of
Yeah.
how much you're told and how much that's driven into you. And listeners would have heard us talk about that a lot in the past. That's so powerful. If you don't, you're going to push away if you don't think you deserve that. And to my story, and probably hundreds of other people's stories, regardless of what you went through, whether it was abandonment, whether it was issues with your health and your weight, or whatever it was, it's the same thing. You don't feel like you deserve anything or you belong anywhere, so you don't bother. You step away from it, which is what I did. Probably went searching for belonging, which I'm very fortunate that I've found. But it's still hard, right? I still only have a few people that are close to me, and it's taken me to get into my 30s before I would really A, put any roots down, and B, let anyone close enough, other than my wife. But
Yeah.
that's a different type of relationship. So it's so interesting. I think we could all really, really take an evaluation of our life and our journey and see where maybe we have not loved ourselves enough, and because of that, we've affected the relationships and maybe where we've ended up. So
Yeah. And I think that it shows, like what you said too, is we attract into our world whatever it is that we believe that we deserve. And that comes down to health, that comes to wealth, that comes to friendships, that comes to everything. Whatever you believe you are worthy of, and that word, I think a lot of people gag at the word I am, or the thought of I am worthy. But like, if you don't believe that you are worthy of deep relationships, then you won't have deep relationships. And if you don't believe that you are worthy of money, and I'm not saying like I believe I'm worthy of money, like of course, like everybody's gonna say like I'm worthy of money, but on a subconscious, deep level, if you believe that it always goes away, um, then it's always going to go away. So it's like it's interesting to that all of these things can be applied on every aspect of our lives.
yeah, yeah, and that's kind of the fear. A quote that I heard this week, and it was directly linked to fear, and how fear doesn't. Basically, the quote is, "Fear doesn't prevent death; it prevents life." And I've kind of finding that there's lots of correlations across everything, right? It's that fear of anything. You are that fearful approach to love, relationships, connections with people, is you're not saving yourself from the heartache and the abandonment by not doing it. You're stopping yourself living and getting the things that you should get in life. So although it's scary, and yeah, you know what, relationships will end and things will stop and your money might run out, and all those scary things that have definitely happened to a lot of people the last year. Um, it, if you hadn't have done them, you'd still be in the same position now. So
Yeah.
do that anyway. Get out there and do it. So I wanted to. That was amazing, by the way. However, I got loads of notes here, so I'm going to go into something else that I was thinking.
Yeah.
So you obviously mentioned that you had worked in TV production, and what I was wondering, and this is definitely not a criticism of TV production or that the world of media. However, my personal experience and my view on it is that because there's obviously a lot of actors, and there's a lot of people playing parts, that I've had some conversations with friends of mine in that world that had a real issue with the masks that are worn in those environments, and not to be specific about what you did and where you worked, but is that something that maybe contributed to some of your kind of your journey or your evolution, and maybe did you see that in other people? Because I think it's and it crosses over to the fitness industry, which is where my kind of point is going. Yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
To be honest, I worked more in factual reality.
Okay.
So it was all real people. I'm using air quotes. It was all real people doing things. So it wasn't, I mean, I saw people acting ways that were elevated versions of themselves, to be a certain character that they wanted to portray. But at the same time, television has the ability to edit. And
Yeah.
so when things go on television, you're also seeing an edited version of somebody's personality. So if they've been deemed to be the villain, you're never going to hear anything nice that they've ever said. If they said, "Oh my God, I really love that shirt," that would never land in the show because they're the villain and they're put in a box. So it's kind of interesting because in that sense, that world decides people's self-image. Like they just decide their external self-image. They go in knowing that they're going to be most people who are a villain on a show know that they're the villain on the show. They just probably didn't realize like, there's hundreds of hours of footage and they're bringing it down to, I'm in it for 5 minutes. So you're going to see the villain moments and only the villain moments. So I think that that's an interesting thing of being able to kind of manipulate the external self-image of somebody. So external being like what everybody else sees of you self-image wise, internal self-image being how you see yourself or how they see themselves.
Yeah, and really interesting and great insight that, the different areas of that, because I'd spoke predominantly to people that had either worked kind of behind the camera or had been kind of actors and stuff that, I've had conversations with. And the other reason why it came up for me and, I kind of picked on some notes is I'm listening to a book right now and a book by Jay Shetty, and he talks a lot about, he's talking a lot about kind of like those masks and, the way we kind of show up. And he tells a story about, now I'm going to butcher it. I think it's Daniel Day-Lewis, who is apparently, and you might know, and some of the listeners can probably correct me as well, but apparently he's one of the most like method actors. I don't know what the word is, but he is fully a method actor in that he literally doesn't come out of his part for the entire time that he's filming. And he plays, I think it's Gangs of New York, where he plays a part, and it basically tells a story about how Daniel Day-Lewis, after the fact, shared that he really struggled with mental health because he almost couldn't detach from this mask that he'd put on because he was playing this role and he was out there basically playing a mentally unstable person out there in like places where, in real life to be the part. And that's kind of where it stemmed from. And that's why I was wondering if that kind of linked. But I found that to be really interesting, that if we can, even if subconsciously we continue to play a part and put a mask on, it fundamentally at, a core level changes who we are. And, maybe TV production, that was kind of like my lead into it. However, in the world of fitness, we see that a lot too, right? And I wonder how much is going on behind the scenes in that aspect. And I guess whether you have any just thoughts or advice or, kind of how you show up and how you do it authentically, because you are, and we spoke a few times and, been exposed to each other's content, etc., are very authentic in the way in which you communicate.
Yeah, I think this is such a great thing to bring up. And I think of like Joaquin Phoenix playing the Joker. I believe he's also a method actor. I mean, he became the Joker in that movie. Like you feel it.
Yeah.
So what comes to me from this is a lot of people say like fake it till you make it. I think the idea of that is you're pretending to be somebody else until you become that person. And okay, that can make sense in some regards, but what if we thought of it as like acting as if? So you're exactly right. What you're talking about here is when an actor is a method actor, they become the character, which is exactly like I became the non-smoker. I started to think like the non-smoker. I was the non-smoker, started to do the same actions as a non-smoker, and then eventually like was the non-smoker. So if we're acting as if, you can actually choose who you want to be. That sounds so like sometimes people are like, I can't choose to be confident. I can't choose to be outgoing. I can't choose to be vulnerable, whatever it is, but you can. And so part of what I do is I even think like when it comes to self-image and acting as if, I do an exercise with my clients and I do an exercise with my coach who has me do this exercise, which is I pick 4 people that I really admire. And so I'll even just choose one person right now, and we're both podcasters. Dax Shepard is somebody who is a huge inspiration to me. I think he's extraordinarily vulnerable on his podcast. He's funny, he's intelligent, and he's open and honest about who he is. And I take a lot of inspiration from him when I'm podcasting. So I use a lot of those things going like, I am vulnerable. And I try and start to embody aspects of him. I'm not trying to be Dax Shepard, but I'm going like, what are the aspects of his personality that I find to be really inspiring and who I want to be in my delivery. And then I start to think the thoughts of the person who would act like that and start to become that person. So my vulnerability comes with me being able to go like, I gain so much when Dax tells a personal story. I want people to gain when I tell a personal story, even if it's hard for me. Because like even me talking about feeling like everybody's going to leave me and me not getting close to people, I'm still currently going through that. And that's something that I've started to implement into my world is I'm the type of person that shares my vulnerability as I'm going through it. But that wasn't part of my self-image or who I thought myself to be, even 6 months ago. I found it extraordinarily hard to share things that I was currently going through. I can tell you when I'm done and everything's good and I've like accomplished stuff, but sharing current stuff is now part of my self-image. But that comes from me going, I am vulnerable and taking things from other people and seeing what they do and going, I want to be more like that. And I'm going to take it one step further, which is the other thing is when you see those people that you find to be really inspiring and you love the way that they are and you're attracted to them, like that energy, you're attracted to that energy, and you see those aspects of their personality, it's actually impossible to see the aspects of their personality in them unless you have them in yourself already. Because you don't have the level of awareness to even see it. So if you see somebody being vulnerable and their level of vulnerability, you have that within you. It's just a matter of pulling it out more and allowing yourself to be that level of vulnerability and acting as if, or becoming the character.
Yeah, and I think that the big takeaway from that, combined thoughts from both of us, and I'm sure that people have already picked up on this, is you need to be hyper aware of who you are becoming. And whether that's, and it's a bit different, you're getting paid millions of dollars to act a part and you're a method actor. However, you can see that when your direction is chosen for you, as in the path of an actor, for example, because that's the example we were using, is you don't have a control over that. You have to be this person. And if that's the way that, you do it, it can massively affect your mental health. And whether that's the way you act, the way you show up, who's around you, it could be that you end up in a spiral that ends in a permanent decision to a temporary problem, and that is quite possibly the worst thing. And I think we're using acting as an example there, but if you're trying to be, or you're just absorbing stuff via social media, and I don't mean to attack social media because I think it's a great tool. But when you're absorbing many things and subconsciously you're trying to be what you see, and that's not a healthy direction for you, it might be for someone else, but a lot of the cases it probably isn't, is you're trying to be something that you're not, right? So, and maybe even if you're not trying, you're subconsciously absorbing that. So your mindset is there. Like we said, you are what you think you are and, what you think about. So it's just being hyper aware, be aware of that and really know your values and know who you are and how you want to show up. And be hyper aware that you are doing that and you're going on that journey. And as you said, sharing it, because it's the, I call it the permission slip when someone tells a story about their childhood or about abandonment, like, someone's brave enough to come on this platform and do that. And, and for us as hosts to share that stuff as well, is it gives permission to another person, gives a permission to somebody to reach out, to have that conversation, to tell their story. And that's basically why we're here, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that the way you just looked at social media, because I don't know that I've ever even actually thought of it in that way of depending, like I very much like have my social media feed curated to be the things that I want to be. So I'm not having things that are out of line of who I am in my feed purposely, but I didn't think of it as, yeah, people like, if I wasn't only following those people and I had a bunch of random accounts in there, where could my thoughts go? And I mean, and that's also, I mean, if I don't want to get into politics, but that's what happens with watching certain like news stations as well, and like consuming that type of stuff. You start to become what you think about all the time.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's so hard for us, if we're looking in from a different lens on that, or it's something that doesn't align with our values, it's so hard for us to understand and empathize with that, because we're also in that, right? We might think that our bubble is full of wonderful things, however, there's more out there, and that's one thing I'm so grateful for with hosting a podcast and having amazing, well, not just hosting the podcast, because I could host it and no one could come on, but is having guests to come on. It would just be me ranting. Is that
Which
I
would
get
also
to
be good.
Yeah, but so, maybe not for this long, but we'll leave that down. Maybe the listeners can share their thoughts on that. It's the how do I put it? It's the ability for me to broaden the bubble that I live in. So it's not just going, and I do have a lot of people from my circle on the show, which is great. However, I'm connecting with new people that do see things a little bit differently. I love nothing more when I go on the show and someone corrects me and says, oh, no, actually, how about thinking about it less? Or they start to tell a story. I was talking with, I had a meet and greet with a guest recently, and he was talking about growing up with like missionary parents that were missionaries and, in a very religious world. And I said it would be great for us to talk about that, because he didn't bring it up initially. He kind of touched on something. I said, oh, hold on a minute, because I would describe myself as agnostic. So for me, there's not a lot that I don't follow a certain religion. I'm definitely not religious. I'm just kind of, I'm aware of other things that are out there. And I was like, I want to talk about it, like open my eyes to that. I want to understand where you were, it was kind of something that he grew up with, so it was imprinted on him. And anyway, so long story short, it's broadening the horizon. It's learning about new things from new people, from new cultures all around the world. And without that, we do get stuck in that. If you just follow exactly the same people all the time on your social media, or you just read the one newspaper and you take everything for, everything's gospel that you read or that you observe or that you view through social media, that there's other things out there. And yeah, all right, there might be some actual factually incorrect things out there that you maybe don't want to absorb. However, there's, like I talk about life, my belief is, and this comes from my background in fitness, is there's about 10% fact in the world of fitness. You squat, lunge, push, pull. There's 3 macronutrients. Drink your water. Like, really, it's the same stuff. And then it's like 90% people's opinion and people's vehicle for the delivery of that. That's life.
Yeah.
There's like 10% of real solid facts, and that's kind of like your values and the facts of life that are true, based on science and everything else that we know to be true as far as our reach, I guess, goes on this planet. And then there's like 90% of people's opinions and people's approach to things.
Yeah.
The 90% is what I want to find out more about because it intrigues me.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just even like it's perspective, right? Seeing it from somebody else's view. And I try and do that. That has helped me out massively, is like starting to see things from different ways. Even if you think of the friends that kicked me out of their crew, like I could see it from her point of view, where she was like, I didn't want to do it. And I felt I followed them, and I should have never done it. And I have forever regretted that moment. And to see it from her perspective, then you go, oh crap, she was in pain too. And we can do that with every single aspect of our lives. But the other thing is, like what you just said too, was talking about our beliefs and our what we believe to be true. Whatever we believe to be true becomes our truth. And so if we don't start to go, wait a second, is this true? Like, am I not good enough to save somebody's life at that swimming pool? Or am I actually equipped to save somebody's life? Yeah, I might be a little bit bigger, but I'm stronger and I can absolutely pull somebody out of that water. If we don't start to go and say, like, what's the other side of this? Then we get stuck in the I'm not good enough to do X. It's like, are you not? Let's start to reevaluate that and realize how awesome you actually are.
I love that.
Rant.
No, great point. You know how awesome you are, and what that looks like. I think again, it's about perspective, but it's also about. I love the quotes. There's lots of quotes out there around comparison, and I don't know who put them out there, so I can't credit the person. But comparison will strip the joy out of your life, and that's what that kind of speaks to me. Because as soon as we are, well, I'm not awesome because I'm not as awesome as this person. I'm not as awesome as many people, in my opinion. However, I have to do a better job of this. I'm super good at accepting compliments, so good. But I also preach that to everyone else, so I have to check my own advice. But it was taking compliments and taking feedback positively, and then also the accepting that my skill sets are, I'm good at what I do as me as a human being. And accepting that and understanding that has its value and its place. Not, well, it's not as good as this person because this person's got more clients or this person's got more followers or this person's got more money.
Yeah.
That comparison will wreck your life quicker than anything. And I figured that out. Grateful that I figured that out at this point in my life, and started to adjust that mindset. And I think we have to accept that everyone's on their own journey, right? Everyone's on their own path. And we just have to keep going in our path. And I think values is a big part. This is something I've been working on, is trying to find really trying to categorize those values, almost have a list of stuff. And I want to have a solid list complete kind of this year, and then like put it up on like a canvas on the wall. To be quite honest, I'll probably print it off the printer and stick it on the wall, but maybe I'll get it on a canvas, write it on the whiteboard with a marker, but have a list of stuff to refer to, right? Like to have those values and know that as long as I'm going in that direction, we talk a lot on the show, and it's kind of our tagline is to be the best possible version of yourself. And that best possible version, it isn't the best ever, it's the best version right now. And and I know we spoke about this and you'd mentioned it, as we've gone back and forward, the same thing. It's like the next version of you, or it's the best version of you can be tomorrow, next week, and it's just continuing on your personal path. Yes, you need to be aware of how other people are perceiving you and what good you're putting in the world, but at the same time you still have to stay on your own path and try not to let be a bit blinkered, and try not to let other people's world and the comparison to that affect the path that you're on.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I think it does.
It totally does. My coach, Hannah is her name, Hannah Khan. She talks a lot about, oh gosh, I'm going to totally lose what she says. What was the last thing you just said?
That, I guess your own path of like, you're being on your own journey and kind of being a bit tunnel vision.
Yeah, she always talks about being a vibrational snob. So she's like, I'm a vibrational snob. And so if somebody is in a vibration that's not in harmony with my vibration, and we talked a little bit about vibration earlier, or energy, and if they're not thinking the same way, or they aren't going towards the same things as me, then I'm just like going to cut it out. It's like, I'm not up for us chatting about how crappy the world is. Like I'm not available for that. So I kind of love the way that she looks at it. Like, no, I'm just going to be a snob with my energy.
Yeah. I always refer to that as we all kind of talk the same message in a different way. I love the word alignment. Like, I think that comes from a background in coaching and fitness, because alignment's so important, and then it's just alignment in life, right? Like you have to be aligned with the people around you, what you're doing and your values and the direction you're going. And there's many factors that affect that, right? We've already spoke about bravery and fear and all those things. That can be hard, right? It's hard to step away from something that isn't aligned with you, or move towards something that's more aligned and away from something else, and that thing can be your comfort. And there can be a lot of it's scary, and there's a lot of resistance and a lot of adversity in that path. However, if it's more aligned and it's where you want to go, you have to be able to grow in that direction and be able to resist that, that adversity and that the tensions that come with that, from whether that's personal, emotional, whatever it is. And actually, and I'm really loving this book. So I'll actually reference the book now. It's called Think Like a Monk. I can't remember, but Jay Shetty, Think Like a Monk. Anyway, so it's amazing. He tells this other amazing story about so out in the desert in I don't even know where it is now, in the States somewhere. And they built out there basically a biosphere. So this is like a research thing they did. They built a massive biosphere all made of like glass, and it was the absolute scientific optimal condition to grow plants, trees, living organisms. I don't know if you've heard this story, but so they built this thing and then they started growing things in it. And then they grow really, really well, and they were quick, and everything happened, and the trees were growing. And basically what happened, I don't know what the height was, it was a certain height the trees would grow, and when they got there, they'd fall over. And basically when they did the study and they researched it, they found out that the reason why it was happening is because they had zero, there was no wind, and there was no, obviously they were absorbing sunlight, they were growing, but there was nothing for them to become stronger. There was no adversity, quote unquote, for them to manage, and meant the trees weren't physically getting stronger. And in our situation as humans, it's about we're not mentally getting stronger without that. So we have to put ourselves in an environment out of our bubble, our biosphere, and be able to absorb that stuff and be okay with it and bounce back from those moments and be resilient, because that's what's going to help. And as long as we're going in the right direction while doing that, not in the wrong direction while doing that, I think that's just a great message for growth and embracing fear, because we all get scared. I'm scared literally daily about things that I'm working on and taking on and trying to build, and whether it's personal development, a podcast, a coaching, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think like Bob Proctor talks about, if the goal doesn't scare you, it's not big enough. It's not the right goal. Like you should be scared. And the fear is never going to go away. And that's something I'm working on, actually working on that with my coach this week, is we're talking about fear and the fact that we typically, get a really exciting idea. We're going to do this thing and we get all excited about it. And then we go towards our goal, and then fear kicks us in the face. And then we go back and go, oh, maybe I'm not supposed to do it. And let's focus on all the things that could go wrong instead of focusing on all the things that could go right. So fear is going to be there. That's going to be there along with you on the ride. But it shouldn't get a say in your decisions or in your actions.
Yeah, for sure. So one thing I want to just talk about a little, discuss as kind of maybe the closing point, but might not be as well, because who knows? Clearly, as everyone can hear, we both like to talk. Yeah. So is coaches need coaches? Yeah. Not really a question, it was a statement, but it just touched on, you've mentioned obviously your coach, and you can definitely give your coach a shout out again as well for everybody. But it's the idea that when we are coaching, or we are helping people, or we are out there making a difference in whatever capacity that is. We spoke about the serving. If you're serving, some people I think struggle with fear of serving others in some capacity because they're not perfect. And they think that when we do it, like people say to me, oh yeah, but you have a podcast, but you're perfect. Like, this. And I'm like, yeah, far from it. Like, listen to the show a little bit and you'll hear that I'm really not. And I have my stuff that I'm working on. So I'd love to hear how you view being a coach with a coach, or who has a coach.
I think it's actually really interesting. This morning I was thinking, I was like, maybe I should hire a personal trainer. And that hasn't been something that's been in my mind for a while. And I was like, why wouldn't I have a personal trainer as a trainer? Like, that makes total sense to hire somebody to push you. That's the whole point. So I think that it's imperative in the coaching world to have a coach. I would be nervous to work with a coach that didn't have a coach, or hadn't worked with a coach. I think that it's pretty key. Like, you always need somebody in your corner to help you out. and to help you get stronger and to see how great you are. I think that's the biggest thing too, is like your coach is coming in and seeing you as your highest version of yourself. And whether or not you see it yet, they're seeing you there and they're holding you to that so that you keep lifting and growing to be that. So I think a coach is incredible. I think everybody should have a coach. I highly preach coaching. And I constantly look to other instructors in fitness too. Like I'm going to other people's fitness classes all the time. I'm taking classes online. I'm constantly learning from other people. Always. I learn from my coach, and what I take from my coach, I also help my clients with and help teams with that I'm working with. It's imperative to keep learning. I think that we don't ever stop learning. And that might be also just like a mentor. People often talk about mentors at work and stuff. It doesn't have to be about fitness either. It can be like a mentor at work. If you want to get better, look to somebody who's ahead of you, and see what they've done.
Yeah, exactly what I was just. It's like you read my mind then. So thank you for reading my mind. The coach, and it's so powerful. And I just thought that was so important that people hear that when if you're listening to the show today and you're thinking, well, this is just two coaches talking, so of course it sounds simple, and however know that it's not. It doesn't, like I've said before, it doesn't come without fear, and we're being coached by others as well to be able to coach people and be help them create that success and serve them. So important. And I think what's important as well is it doesn't have to be. You don't necessarily have to go out and search out a professional coach that you hire. Yes, you can, and that would no doubt be the best option, should we say, the gold standard. However, who are you speaking to every day? What are you listening to? What are you watching? Who are you absorbing? Who are your friends? Who are you having those daily conversations with, those weekly conversations? And are they doing all those things that you just mentioned? Are they elevating you? Are they seeing that best version of you? Are they reconfirming that to you? Are they helping you to see that, to see how good you are, how talented you are, how awesome you are? Are they firstly, are they giving you that the feedback? And I guess aligned with that is compliments to say you're doing a great job. And are you surrounded by people that you can be vulnerable and accept those compliments and do it without being scared or self-deprecating or whatever? Because we often do that based on the person that's giving it to us. So you have to be around those people. So if you don't have those people, go out there and find a coach, find a mentor, or just try and surround yourself with more people. Like, I'm super fortunate that I have two co-hosts of the show that are extremely good friends of mine, and we have these conversations weekly with each other. You did this on the show, you did that on the show, and it's a no boundary conversation where people, we're not getting upset, we're just absorbing it and creating growth. Very fortunate, very grateful for that. Find those people, whatever. It doesn't mean you have to go start a podcast with them, but you might want to find that, maybe it's a men's group, maybe it's a women's group, maybe it's a mentor at work, like you said. So I think that's an amazing full circle and a great takeaway for everybody. I'd love to hand the microphone back to you though for anything else you wanted to share, anything else that there's loads of notes here I didn't get to, but that's what I love about these conversations, as we just go off on a random book quotes and other stuff that we talked about. So
yeah, I love that. I think that where we're kind of ending here is on environment, is on your surroundings. And it's like what you just said, who you surround yourself with, what you surround yourself with. Like, do you have your gym clothes set out at night? Like, do you there's so many aspects that change, but just starting to pay attention to your surroundings and what triggers happen from those surroundings that lead you to feel great. Who are the people who, when you're around them, you're just like, I'm on fire. Like, you just feel so good. Those are the people that you want to surround yourself with more. The activities that you do. If journaling is something that makes you feel awesome, amazing. If working out makes you feel awesome, if going for hikes, all of these are active things that I'm mentioning, except for the journaling. But whatever you can do to make yourself feel good, man, just take that and run with it. Because it's just when you feel good, you continue to feel good. So it just starts that domino effect of more and more things feeling good in your world and attracting. And then when you start feeling good, people are attracted to that good vibe, and you end up drawing in new people into your life. Like Gareth and I wouldn't have met if it wasn't for like positive vibes and sharing our positive vibes with the world. And I'm so grateful that we're able to have this conversation and be able to connect and hopefully help the listeners feel their best.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. That's just I can say nothing else to make that more impactful. So I just want to thank you, Alicia, for being on the show today, for your time, your energy, everything you've shared. It's been very insightful for me. The best shows we do, don't get me wrong, there's fun ones where, you know, I talk a lot and maybe the guest shares stuff, but the episodes where I learn about myself selfishly, and, you know, I know there's thousands of people's listening. However, selfishly, it's about me as well. So the ones where I learn the most are the ones that, you know, I'm so appreciative of. So thank you so much for being on your show. We appreciate you supporting, you know, everything we're doing. And hand it over to you for any final thought before we sign off.
Thank you. Just thank you. I really appreciate it. This is a ton of fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Listen, we hope you enjoyed learning some new things or reconfirming some stuff that you already knew. And I hope that there's some takeaways there that you can really action. And that's a big part. I already touched on this about being that action taker. So I want you to choose something from the show today, take it away, and start to create some action around something that's going to help you continue to be the best version of yourself, and also even a better version of yourself in the future. So please, if you did get something, share this episode with someone you love, put it out there on social media. You know, if you want to support the show, you heard how to do that earlier. And remember to check the show notes so you can check out all the amazing things that Alicia is doing. Check out her podcast, check out the awesome stuff that she's putting out on social media. You will not be disappointed. And remember, be the best possible version of yourself you can be. Keep making a difference, and we'll catch you on the next episode.